What is up everybody, it is me DevilNeverCry, and in today's video I'm going to be going over the Bloody Palace mode. This free update released only yesterday and is a challenging horde mode that can prove difficult for even the most accomplished Devil Hunter. This video will essentially focus on Nero, but many of the tips can be applied to the other characters. So without further ado, let's just dive right in. First and foremost, to even unlock Bloody Palace, you have to have beaten the game at least once. It doesn't matter what difficulty, either human or Devil Hunter, but once you do so, you'll unlock the Bloody Palace. Well, what is the Bloody Palace? Simply put, the Bloody Palace is a mode that pits you against floor after floor of enemies and bosses, culminating in the 101st floor, allowing you to test your skills as the difficulty ramps up. It is important to mention that it is a timed run. You start with only 2 minutes on the clock, and every time you kill an enemy, depending on what style rank you kill them at, you'll gain a set number of time added to your timer. At the same time, if you clear a floor without taking any damage whatsoever, the timer will receive a nice big boost, essentially incentivizing you to sort of put stylishness to the side and focus on efficiency. Because that timer can run out, and if it does, your run will end prematurely. As I mentioned, the difficulty begins to ramp up. You start on the base human difficulty, I believe, and then as you go through each and every floor, the difficulty begins to slightly incrementally increase, culminating in floors 80 to 101 being set in Dante Must Die mode. So this isn't going to be a walk in the park. And if you've only played the game on Human or Devil Hunter, you're going to be in for a bit of a shock. But hopefully this video should be able to alleviate some of your woes. So let's start with the first tip. I would always recommend you be charging the blue rose. I have the blue rose, aka the gun button, set to the right trigger so that no matter what I'm doing, I can always be charging the weapon. And there's a few reasons I do this. First of all, because of the immense damage that the blue rose does, it seems that regardless of what difficulty, what floor you're on, the blue rose always does a nice chunk of damage, allowing you to either chip away at enemy health, chip away at boss health, or outright kill enemies altogether, because yes, it is that powerful. The other reason I recommend you use the blue rose is due to the properties of its attacks. The charge shot essentially stuns enemies, and it can get you out of a tricky situation. The shot itself can stun and falter enemies, and the explosion can even launch them, including some of the trickier enemies like the Proto-Angelo, whose guard is kind of hard to break at times. Again, it's kind of tricky to always be charging the blue rose if you're playing with the default control scheme, which is why I suggest you remap it to the right trigger, or in fact, some have even mapped it to the left or right bumper. Again, play around with the control scheme and see what's most comfortable for you. Moving on to the next tip, which I'd say is of equal importance, is use the exceed system. For those of you who don't know what it is or how to use it, I have a video that goes over the fundamentals of it. I'll leave a link in the description down below so that you can check that out in your own time. But simply put, it's a system that enhances Nero's attack power and attack speed, substantially in fact, and it's something that shouldn't be slept on because it allows you to kill enemies not only quickly and efficiently, but also stylishly, because it does provide a healthy boost to your style rank. So there's no reason you shouldn't be using it, because it's hard to master, I'll give you that, but it is quite easy to pick up. And when paired with the max act system, you'll be blitzing through enemies in no time. The next tip that I'd actually like to discuss is something that Itsuno-san and Matt Walker themselves touched upon during the Capcom UK livestream, and that is staying in the air. Simply put, staying in the air is the safest way to damage enemies. Whilst you're in the air, no enemies can really attack you, especially if they're on the ground. So by limiting their options, that allows you to divide and conquer. Nero's wire snatch ability, or snatch ability with the Devil Bringer, allows you to pull most enemies towards himself, so there's no reason that you shouldn't be up in the air, pulling enemies towards you, attacking them, even jump cancelling if you want. But it is much safer than staying on the ground and attempting to combo them there. And this idea of aerial combat is something that even extends to bosses. Yes, of course you can't snatch them towards you, but you can snatch yourself towards them. And a lot of the sort of giant, larger than human bosses in this game seem to struggle when you get up in their face with ruthless aggression. Most of their hits seem to miss, and the ones that do hit you are easily avoided. So that's something that you should be taking advantage of. Again, this is a tip that actually extends to Dante as well. You can have enemies up in the air and attack them indefinitely, and they'll be stunned and helpless, allowing you to beat them to your heart's content. Moving swiftly on to something that I've actually talked about on the channel quite a lot recently, and that is the manipulation of the camera. Simply put, enemies in this game won't attack unless they are on camera, allowing you to sort of neuter them by not having them on screen. Of course, they'll try their hardest to get on screen and start an attack animation, but as long as you stay on top of them, it should be fine. But you can use the camera to essentially divide and conquer. You can pair this with the aerial combat tip that I was talking about before, or you can even just move enemies away from each other and then turn the camera to sort of focus on one. It's something that has helped exponentially, in fact, and it's something that you should be taking advantage of, not just in Bloody Palace, but even in the main game. The next tip I'd like to cover, and this one is in terms of strategy, is to always go for the weaker enemies first. The weaker enemies often like to bunch around. The stronger enemies sometimes mess with your lock-on, sometimes blindside you from an attack whilst you're trying to focus on the stronger enemies, so always try and clear them first. And in terms of the green Empusa, the small, faintly green glowing bugs that can heal enemies, hands down you want to get rid of those first. By healing the stronger enemies, they essentially waste your timer because you could spend a minute wailing on an enemy only for them to be healed to almost full health, meaning you have to do all of that again. At the same time, you also want to defeat them first because they drop health. So if you're a little bit low on health, maybe you've taken a few unnecessary hits, defeating them should heal you right back up. This next tip is going to be Nero specific, but every 10 levels you are able to pick from an array of 8 Devil Breakers. You can of course have multiples of some of the stronger ones like the Ragtime arm or the Buster Breaker arm you can only have one of, but the rest have 2 for you to pick from. You want to use this to strategize. If you're going in blind, you of course won't know what's coming up, so it's always best to go with a balanced loadout. Me personally, my loadouts were always Gerbera heavy because I like to dodge, I like the aerial maneuverability. And of course I always picked up the Ragtime because for enemies like Fury it comes in invaluable. At the same time, you always want to keep this in mind because if you're towards the end of sort of the stage and you find yourself almost near the next pickup point, feel free to go all out on the next encounter because you know in your mind that you can restock. At the same time, try not to blow all of your arms in one stage, especially if you've just resupplied, because it'll be a while before you are able to actually restock. Did I mention bosses, by the way? Because you'll be facing a lot of them throughout your Bloody Palace run. So let's just dive right through what bosses you fight at what stage. So kicking things off, the first one is going to be Goliath at stage 20. I believe he's only on human difficulty, so he shouldn't pose too much of a threat in terms of the damage he does or the damage you do to him. Then, at stage 40, you're going to be fighting Artemis. This time I believe she'll be at Devil Hunter difficulty, again, so it's not going to be too tricky, but you're going to stay on your toes because of course Artemis can do enough damage to kill you easily if you let her. Then, at stage 60, you have Cavalier, and he's going to be on Son of Sparta difficulty. And this is interesting because throughout the normal campaign, you don't fight Cavalier with Nero whatsoever. So you're going to have to think on your toes and strategize as to how you can defeat him, because the parry timings, the lack of access to a Royal Guard are going to make things tricky. But if you persevere, you should be able to get through. Next up, I believe, is Malphus at stage 80. I think she might actually be on Dante Must Die difficulty, but in all honesty, I find Malphus, the walking talking bucket of KFC, to be an absolute joke. She's ridiculously easy to no damage. Just go in there with some ragtimes, go in there with a Buster Breaker, and you'll absolutely melt her health. Again, if you're having trouble, you can always check out what I did on stream, and you should be fine. And if you've made it this far, then this is when things begin to kick into overdrive. I mean, you sort of sense a pattern here, every 20 levels there's a boss, but that all gets thrown out the window quite quickly from stages 81 all the way to 101. So at stage 90, you face Cerberus. He is, of course, in Dante Must Die difficulty. He will Devil Trigger. Again, you don't fight him with Nero or even V during your campaign, so this is going to be new. You're going to have to come up with new strategies, think on your feet. Again, charge shot, exceed. He should go down a treat. But you've conquered stage 90. Things are looking good. If you manage to conquer the insane gauntlets that the game decides to throw at you from stages 91 all the way up to stages 97, then you're in the home stretch, and the next few encounters shouldn't trouble you too much. Before you start stage 98, you'll hit a convenient rest area, kind of telling you that this is the calm before the storm, and it's time to nut up or shut up, because this next 4 stages are going to be pretty wild. Kicking it off with stage 98, you have a seated Urizen. It's only going to be his first phase where he's in the seat. All you have to do is break the shield. That's literally it. This is the easiest stage, so you shouldn't have too much trouble. So you break the shield, fades to white. Hopefully you haven't lost too much health, because you're thrown right back into the fray with stage 99. This time it's going to be a standing Urizen with all sorts of tentacles coming at you. You want to be careful. This is the version of him you fight in Mission 8. He has all these same moves. But again, Dante Must Die difficulty, so he does a lot of damage. You got to break the shield, then you got to whittle his health down. You probably won't whittle all of his health down when you break the shield for the first time, so you have to break the shield again, and then he comes down, and then you're on to stage 100. And this time you fight Urizen after he eats the fruit of the demon tree. This is going to be the Mission 17 version of him. Dante Must Die, of course. So you're in for a treat because, again, this is a version of him you've never fought with Nero or V. But again, there's no shield this time. So whatever damage you do, you'll immediately see on the health bar. Just keep on him. Remember to stay in the air. Remember all the fundamentals. And he should go down quite easily. After beating the third and final form of Urizen, you're greeted with a few green orbs to replenish your health because you're in the home stretch, and the last stage is the final one, and at this point most have probably guessed what the boss is, and it's Vergil, on Dante Must Die difficulty, the same as his Mission 20 incarnation, so if you've done that you know exactly what to expect. Personally speaking, I found stage 101 to be quite easy. Vergil is a simple boss when you know what you're doing, and his health is quite fair. You just need to look out for his doppelganger and his devil trigger. But after having done that, you'll have beaten the Bloody Palace. I believe you'll get your S rank as long as you finish the Bloody Palace, and that's essentially going to wrap it up in terms of the tips that I can give. So let me know how your Bloody Palace runs go. What did you find to be the trickiest level? I know a lot of people are going to be saying level 70 because of the Triple Fury, but Ragtime alleviates all of that. Stay tuned for more DMC5 and subscribe, as there's going to be more Bloody Palace runs coming shortly. It has been me, DevilNeverCry. I would like to thank all of you for watching, and as always, I'll see you next video.